Welcome to the third show of Define Yourself. I'm Ellen Seidel, and I just wanted to give you a bit of background about the Seidel method, which is a multidisciplinary approach to maximize human potential. And what breaks my heart is seeing professionals and managers who believe they can't reach the next rung in their career ladder. And so I help those professionals and managers to thrive in their current role and to use it to position themselves for further growth and impact. And what they discover through this process is they also, and perhaps more importantly, will gain increased meaning in the work they pursue. And I'm thrilled to be having my first three shows so far, and welcome Diane here in a minute, to the Define Yourself show. And kind of what it's all about is the goal of this show is to have a conversation with captivating, empathetic, and motivating individuals. These individuals have shown that they possess the unique ability to tap into and uncover their extraordinary human potential. And we all have this extraordinary human potential just within us that we can tap into. And so I'm very excited to be able to explore this human potential, both at work and beyond, from a perspective that really prioritizes us as whole humans before we think about our various roles like employee, business owner, or fill in the blank. And so I'm going to introduce Diane here. And so Diane Burton, I'm just thrilled to have you join us here. And you're the author of The Master's Masterpiece, A Preacher's Wife's Journey from a Broken and Fat Masterpiece to the Master's Peace, spelled P-E-A-C-E. And Diane goes from heartbreak to happiness. She's a certified grief coach, holistic cancer educator, a direct sales and network marketing coach and leader, Christian women's coach, a minister's wife for over 48 years, Bible class teacher for children, teenage girls, and adult women, speakers for ladies, events, mother of two, and a grandmother, and like I said, in a leadership position with a direct sales company. And her motto is reframe your mindset so you can live your life to the fullest spiritually, emotionally, physically, and financially. And welcome to the program, Diane. It's so awesome to have you here.
Thank you, Ellen. I'm thrilled to be here. And congratulations on your new show. This is great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and you were one of the first people I thought of when I decided to have this show. So we've known each other, I think, for close to 3 years now.
Yeah.
And so I want to just kind of dive in. So here we go. I know that the first part of your story in this interview, we're going to kind of explore, kind of your childhood and some, pretty rough times that happened. And so why don't you share a little bit about yourself and the whole arc of your story in the beginning in terms of weight gain and what that was like for you as a child.
Well, Ellen, I was this little perky, petite child until the time I was 6 years old. And all of a sudden, I just started gaining weight, and it scared my parents. And they took me to the doctor and what is wrong with her? And he said there was nothing wrong with me. And I continued to gain weight all through the years. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I was over 200 pounds. And what was it like? It was rough. I was bullied. And what's interesting, Ellen, is I didn't really realize anything was different about me. I was still a little kid. I was a child. And yet people made comments, and I began to realize something's wrong. Something's different about me now. And, people then would make those comments and it would make me realize I am different. And why do people have to be so cruel? And why do people have to call me names and constantly put attention on my weight? I could see in the mirror that I was overweight. So it was kind of rough being bullied and called names. And that messes with your self-esteem, your self-worth, even makes you think you're stupid. I allowed it to. Let me put it that way.
And that's a realization we'll talk about in a little while here coming up, because that's part of the transformation that I'm so thrilled to know your story, and you tapped into some inner strength that at this point in time you didn't really realize you had. And you look at you and you're like, how could you have, how could you have 200 pounds? You're so fit. So let's do a little bit of a transition though. So when did you decide, and I use the word release on purpose, and you can explain that if you'd like, when did you make the decision to release the weight?
Well, I had always, all through that time of being bullied, and looking in the mirror. I didn't like that I was different. I didn't like that I was overweight, yet people constantly making the comments. It was as though I put a, this X up and a fence up and leave me alone. And it's almost as though I was so stubborn about it. I'm not going to lose weight. You're not going to tell me what to do. In my senior year in high school, I would go to school in the morning, and in the afternoon, I worked at a bank. And in January of my senior year, one of the ladies at the bank said, "Hey, Diane, we're going to a weight loss meeting tonight. Would you like to join us?" I said yes. And I think I said yes because it was my decision. And all the ladies in there, women just constantly talk about losing weight and being on a diet and all of that. So I decided to go. I chose a diet that night. It wasn't the healthiest, yet that's what I did. I didn't know then it wasn't healthy. And I went home and told my mom, this is what I want to do. And she was very supportive. And it was at that time then I started this weight loss journey. And by the time I graduated high school, I'd lost quite a bit. By the time I started college in the fall, I was at a good weight. And over the years, I've continued to release, because it was during the time I was being trained to be a grief coach that I discovered, instead of losing something, I wanted to release it. Because my thought was, if I talk about losing, what do you do when you lose something? You go looking for it. And I never wanted to put that weight back on. I did not want to ever find it again. I was like, I want it gone forever. And so I now talk about releasing. And it's the same thing I do when I talk about releasing negative thoughts and letting go of those things. So, yeah.
Wow.
And it's now been 52 plus years.
Wow.
It was January. I'm going to say in January of 1971 that I made that decision. And so I've kept it off, and it's a joy. It's fun.
That's amazing. So let's talk about you. When we had a little bit of a prep meeting, you told me that you had kind of a realization, a really big one. And it was part, I think, of when you were in your grief counseling certification. So you tell us more about that, because it's one thing to release the weight, and it's another to deal with, that little girl that went through all that bullying. And I think you might have been quick to give the explanation, meaning it must have been really, really hard. And so my heart goes out to that little girl in you. So what happened then?
Well, at the very first event that I went to for my grief coach training, the trainer has a method that she uses. And so each of us would sit with her. And for part of our training, she would do this coaching method with us in front of the group. And so as we talked, I picked what appeared to be a very painful thought. And as she coached me through it, it dawned on me, I've been hanging on to this little girl, this little bullied girl, for 40 years, because it was January of 2011, exactly 40 years later, from the time I had made the decision to release the weight to when I started my grief coach training. And it was at that first event that I realized I'd been hanging on to this little bullied girl. And I would sabotage myself. It was keeping me from being all that God intended me to be. It was keeping me from being better in my direct sales business. I felt like at times I wasn't the best mom or the best wife. And bless my husband's heart, we didn't talk about this before, but I want to tell you something, share a story. Every single time I would get dressed, I would look in the mirror and I would ask my husband, does this outfit make me look fat? I still was hanging on, even though I could see in the mirror that I was not that overweight little girl anymore. I was so afraid that I would put on something that would make it look like I was still overweight. My daughter overheard that so much that she began to ask if the clothes she put on made her look fat. And my daughter's never, ever been fat. She's always been this teeny tiny petite person.
Mm.
So I was passing on my negative thoughts, my heart, my fears to my children. And so once I realized at that grief coach event what I had been doing, I said, Never more. No, this is done. This little girl, I've got to let her go." And if you think about it, I probably held on to her because that was part of me. That was me. And so letting go of her, there's a lot of people that grieve this because it's almost like a death. I let go of this. And I even had my senior picture in my billfold. And I had shown that to some of them there at the event. This is me. And they were like, "It doesn't even look like you. There's no way." And when I got home from that first event, I sat down with my husband, and I share this story in the TEDx that I did. But I sat down with my husband and I said, "This is no longer me." And I ripped it up and I laid it in a little bowl and I lit a match and burned it. And I cried. It was so emotional to think that I am willing to do this. I've got to let go of this. It's keeping me from being the person I could be. And just a day or two later, I was with my dear friend, my best friend, and she said, "You're different." So people could even see that something had shifted for me from that.
That's just such an interesting story. So, especially like the piece, and I was going to ask when you brought it up about you're in this grief, you know, training so that you can help other people, but then you kind of had to apply it to yourself,
Mhm,
right? Do you want
mhm.
to maybe explain kind of a little bit on how that worked and the
Well,
results?
Ellen, grief isn't just death. And as a minister's wife, I have a lot of people come to me and talk to me, and I didn't always feel like I knew what to say. So that was one of the reasons to go into this grief coach training. And as I learned the methods and was coaching people, I realized people have so much in their life to let go of, to release, that has nothing to do with death. It has to do with maybe they were abused, maybe people, just life in general. Maybe you've moved, maybe you've gone through a divorce, maybe you've had a job change. There's a lot of things that can cause the grief. And
Mhm.
so as I'm being trained, things are coming up for me. We tend to stuff it all down. It'll be okay. I'm strong. I can get through this. I don't need anybody to help me through this. And so it gets stuffed down, kind of like a beach ball underwater. And you know what happens when you let go of a beach ball that's underwater?
It's going to bounce up.
It's going to explode out of the water. And that's kind of what happens. And things begin to get released. And even when I was coaching someone, when I was going through the training, the trainer taught us a layer at a time, a little at a time. You don't want someone to feel like they have to let go of everything at that first session, because it's over many, many years that it happened. And so as you let go a little bit at a time, then all of a sudden other things do start coming, but you're better prepared to let go of them.
Yeah, well, we kind of touched on this question, but I do want to. I think you know my sense of humor. So I mean, here we had all that seriousness. I hope it's an okay transition, but
Absolutely.
you made me realize about the grief. About something a little bit more recent, and that was, gosh, I think it was sometime last year. I had started reading Dr. Cloud's book, Necessary Endings, but I realized I wasn't finishing the book, which is kind of an irony.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, why am I not finishing the book? And it was because I knew that I was going to come to a realization that I needed to follow my heart and do, my coaching full time. And that meant leaving my corporate career of 35 years.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's a little bit funny about, not finishing the book, Necessary Endings. And so you're right. Like grief comes in a lot of different, flavors. So that's really great
Well,
that you
and
were doing that.
as this is being recorded, we just went through a move,
Yeah.
middle of August, and I hope it's okay to say the date when we're recording this.
Yeah.
Here it is, mid-October, and so just almost the end of 3rd week of October, and so just 2 months and a week ago, we made a move, and we had been in the other town for 20 years. My husband had preached at that church for 20 years, so you go through a lot of things with a lot of people over those 20 years, and we've seen a lot of grief. And I've worked with some of those women, and they, taught the classes and listened to things that people have been through. And so I'm so grateful that I invested in becoming a grief coach. I have zero regret, and I'll be honest, it wasn't cheap. And yet it was such a great investment because first of all, it helped me, and now I can be more compassionate, understanding, and realize that I do know how to listen. I've learned to be a better listener and to ask good questions. And then we've been through some other things in our life with family and everything. And because of the coaches training I've had, not just grief coaching, but other training I've had with other coaches trainers, I'm able to it helps you be aware. And so I'm able to work through some things and reach out to the right people because every coach needs a coach. Every coach wants a coach, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'd agree that everybody needs a coach, but that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah,
But
yeah, exactly.
so, what was the original reason why you wanted to become a grief coach?
Because of listening to the trainer one night on an interview that another coach was doing with her, and I heard the shift in the person that she was working with, and I thought, I want to be able to do that for these ladies that I'm talk to at church or in my direct sales business and be able and because my personality is just do this. If you'll just get over it, that was how I and maybe it's because that's how I was raised, type of thing, and be tough and you can get through it. And yet that's not how you get through anything. That's that thing of stuffing it down.
Yeah, then you're not going through it. It's going around you. It's getting stuck somewhere.
Yeah, and it affects every part of your life and everything you're doing. And so I thought, I want to be able to serve others and be able to help them transition through. I want to be a catalyst for others as they are going through some things. And it's just amazing how aware I am. And I look at our life, and Ken and I have lived in several different places as a preacher's family. And we still have friends from when we were the first place we lived. And we've been married 48 years. And so when you think about that, there's a lot of people who are going through a lot of things.
Well,
So
just
that was my reason.
as someone who was widowed in my mid
Mhm.
to late 40s, I kind of come at it from the point of view of people don't know what to say.
Yes.
When someone loses someone that's, I mean, maybe we're more used to losing parents, but I don't know. I couldn't even imagine what it was like to lose a child. But, I lost my husband and he was in his mid 40s and we'd been married like 16, 17 years. So like that wasn't what the plan was. The plan was to be like you guys, 48, 50, 60, keep counting. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. And I know I learned that everybody's grief journey is their own.
Mhm.
And there's no like prescription. And just when
No.
you think you're like, maybe not over it, but through a lot of it, then bing, something will remind you.
Yes.
And then you just have to kind of accept the emotions as they roll through us. That was my way of adapting. So I don't know if they taught that in the class.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, like you said, everybody grieves differently. And sometimes there are other things going on in your life while you're going through that grief, and you may not get to grieve for a little while.
Mm.
You may grieve immediately on something, and then it might even be 2 or 3 weeks that it really will hit, and you will do some grieving. And like you said, it could be several years later, and something triggers, and you go into a grief. For me, after my mom, passed away, you think you're doing well, and then I'll be sitting at church and we'll sing a song, and I'm just like,
Same
crying.
here.
And, so yeah, everybody grieves differently. And something I want to bring in here that I think is really important. There are things out there people teach where you're going to go through these different emotions. And there's even someone who once taught these are the emotions you will go through. And I actually had somebody message me when I was taking care of my mom before she passed away. And they said, here are the emotions you will go through. And I looked at that list and I was like, no, no. I told my sister, and one of the emotions was anger. And she said, you better not be angry that mother dies. I said, I'm not going to be angry. Not at her age. And she's ready to go. And so I think it's really key for us to think before we speak to someone and say, you're going to go through this emotion, or you'll do this, or you'll do this. It's more of allow whatever emotion wants to come, and know that it's okay to grieve the way you want to grieve. Tears are cleansing for the soul. Some people will cry and some people won't. Some people will want to sleep, and some people will want to eat, and some people will I want to go take a vacation, or I got to get right back to work type of thing. So we've got to allow people to work through, yet at the same time, it's really key that they have some support, someone who will talk to them, ask them questions, and help them dig down to make sure that what they are doing is healthy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I right on. I agree with everything. I'll add one little thing just from, and we also do disc. So I don't know if this is because my disc is that I'm very action oriented, but
Mhm.
what I found is when I would get to the point of kind of no mobility,
Mhm.
like that was kind of like the fetal position on the bed. And I
Yeah.
don't know how long that lasted. I would tell myself, okay, do something to honor the memory. And so that
Mhm.
was an action, but it was a directed action. And so, sorry, I'm gonna bring tissue here, but even all these years later, what I ended up doing, because my husband died a week before Father's Day,
Mm.
and he knew he was not going to make it because we were in hospice. And so I said to him, "I got you a Father's Day present." He goes, "What'd you get?" I go, "The girls and I have donated in your honor to do a science fair at the elementary school," because he loved science.
Oh.
And so I didn't know what to give him, right? And so that way I could give him his love spread to other people through the science fair. And then a year later, my girlfriend, she was in marketing and PR, did an amazing job and wrote a little article, and it was an absolute smashing success. All the kids came, and it was just so wonderful. And so, it doesn't make the emotions go away per se, but it helps move you through them, because what
Mhm.
you're focusing now is not the loss, but like really in this case, the gain of his love
Mhm.
for science, kind of paid
Mhm.
it forward in a way. So
Well, and focusing on what you had and what you still have, if that makes sense. So the sweet memories, that was something for us when my mom passed away, was my brother and sister and their children and our children sat around, and we just started looking at pictures and laughing, and making, actually kind of jabbing with each other, and just
telling stories.
yes, yes.
Oh yeah, those are
So
wonderful. Mhm.
so those are the kinds of things. And no one knows how another person feels. that is something that sometimes is said. Someone will look at you and go, "Well, I know how you feel," because maybe their mom died or their brother or whatever. No, that's not a good thing to say because no one can ever know how someone else feels. And the situation is always different of what I went through when my mom passed away and what someone else went through when their mom passed away, or what you went through when your husband passed and what someone else has gone through. And so one of the things that's good to say is, I can't imagine how you feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then yeah, and that then gives the person the opportunity to either say they don't have to say anything, or they can say, "No, you don't. You can't imagine," or they may want to then open up and start talking.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
just sitting with them, just sitting there, "How
Being there.
can I support you? How can I serve you?" And I
Mhm.
know sometimes, well, my best friend's husband died 2.5 years ago, and so I've walked through this, been close with her through this, and I've watched what she has done, and a lot of times it's they do wanna talk about him, and sometimes it's we talk about other things, and we do our best to laugh and have
Mhm.
enjoy life. Keep
Yeah,
living. What would that person want you to do? They would want you to keep enjoying life.
exactly. So my next question, a little bit of a segue here, is I want you to tell me. I got to get my mouse to work. There we go. What led you to becoming the author of the Master's Masterpiece?
Well, the grief coach trainer, she was a screenwriter actually at one time, and her husband died. They had a 4-year-old son. He was like 33 years old, and he died. And so she could not find anyone to work. Well, she would go places for grief coaching, grief share, grief counseling, whatever words you want to use. And she said some of them were worse. It was worse than the death. It was awful. She would come out of it and just feel awful. And so she decided to create this training for for people to become grief coaches. And so because she's a writer, she wanted us to write a book. And she constantly was saying, "You got to write a book. You got to write a book." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, uh-huh." And so one day we were coaching over the phone, and I shared with her my favorite scripture being Ephesians 2:10, that we are God's masterpiece created in Christ Jesus for good works. And I told her, I said, "I love this scripture, yet I don't feel like God's masterpiece. I did not feel like, how could God love someone who according to other people was this awful, ugly, stupid, you know, unworthy type person." And she said, "I want you to run with that." I said, "Okay." And it was with that scripture. "I want you to start with that scripture and run with it." I said, "Okay." Well, it was coming up on my turn to teach our ladies' Bible class there. And I thought, let's try it. And so I started with that scripture, and week to week over the quarter, I would write a lesson and write another lesson and write another lesson. And so when I finished, it was a little rough. Bless the ladies' hearts, they were so patient with me. And it was a struggle for some of them because of some of the things I taught of taking care of the body physically and eating better and things like that. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. And so I took that, and people then began to ask me, "Do you have a book?" As I was coaching and talking about being God's masterpiece. I said, "No, but I've written lessons for it." And so finally, I contacted a publisher, and I said, "Can you help me here?" And so we got it published, and I should have had it laying here so that I could show it to you. I don't know if that's allowed. I've got it
So,
behind me.
absolutely. Yeah, but I have a question too,
Okay.
because I'm going to tease you that you buried the lead. But that's like what they say in newspapers, not books. But if I'm hearing you correctly, once you while you're in the beginnings of the grief counseling and you kind of confronted yourself about letting go of the hurt little girl, you realized you are a masterpiece. God
Yes.
created you.
Yes.
So yeah, share about that, because that's like the crux of the book, isn't it?
Well,
Yeah.
that's it. There's the book, The Master's Masterpiece. And yes, it all began, it started falling into place of Diane. You really truly are God's masterpiece. And so Ephesians 2:10 was the beginning, and then Psalm 139, you should see my Bible. I have just written all over my Bible from that scripture, because it talks about God knows my thoughts. He knows when I sit, he knows when I stand. He's in front of me, behind me, beside me. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. He knit me together in my mother's womb. And I started looking at that, Ellen, and realizing I'm pretty special. You know? Wow, he put a lot of thought into me, you know? And so I began to realize how much value there is on me and every single person on this earth. Because if God created me, he created me in his image. And he created me. I can be creative also. And I have the characteristics of God in me if I will nurture them and use them. And so that's what this is about. And it's 10 chapters. Each chapter is a question with 4 answers. So you do an answer a day and you've got a 40-day devotional book. And at
Wow.
the end of it, it's a study journal. There's a 10-week study journal. So it's kind of 2 books in one, in a sense. And a person can study on their own, or they can do it with the ladies group, Bible class, that type of thing. So yeah, I began to realize, wow, I really am God's masterpiece. And I'm going to share something here. One day, because of me being bullied in those 40 years, I realized I was continuing to bully myself
Mhm.
over those 40 years. All those people who had bullied me in school, they were gone. I wasn't even living around them anymore. And then I continued to bully me. And Ellen, one day it hit me that by me being so critical of myself and bullying myself and not thinking I'm worthy and thinking I'm stupid and not thinking I'm creative, all those things that we allow ourselves, I realized I was being a bully to God. I
Mm.
was bullying his amazing creation. Wow. That was like a punch in the gut.
Yeah.
I mean, it just about knocked me to my knees when I realized what I was doing. And so that was a major, major shift for me to realize that I want to I want to care for this creation, not only for me, I want to do it for God, because it doesn't belong to me, it belongs to him.
Right.
It's his. He created it. And when you think about giving a gift to someone or creating something for someone, don't you want them to care for it? If you created something for somebody and you gave it to them and they just tossed it aside or trashed it, how would we feel? And that's how God feels, I believe, when I'm trashing this body. So whether it's spiritually, emotionally, or physically. So we're a 3-part being. And if one of those parts is out of whack, all 3 are out of whack. And so I'd already started the taking care of myself physically, and I've gotten better over the years. I've learned healthier foods to eat. I knew I also had to work on my emotional part, the thoughts. And as I was getting that healthier, then I could get healthier spiritually. As I was working on the spiritual, the emotional got healthy. They were they were working together there. So
Yeah, I love this because there's an old joke. I guess it's a joke where there's I guess a guy that is very concerned about this big, hurricane, and he's like, God save me, and then the waters are rising, and he has to go from the first bedroom up to the second floor, up to the roof, and then someone in a boat comes by and says, "Sir, do you need help?" "Oh no, God's going to save me," and then they leave, and then the helicopter comes. "Sir, can we rest?" "Oh no, God's going to save me." And then the guy ends up at the pearly gates, and he's like, "God, you didn't save me." He goes, "Who do you think sent the men in the boat, and the helicopter?"
yeah,
And so
yeah,
you're like, where are you going on with the story? And the reason why I love this is that it kind of reminds me that, in my view, I don't want to put my, views on you, but in my view, that's why the locus of control being within ourselves, and we can partner with God or whomever your belief system is to help yourself. You made a conscious decision to let go of that bully girl, but like in a loving way. You loved her, you transformed yourself, and then you went, like, off, goodbye, we don't need you anymore. And that choice that we make every day, and in many cases, we're not even listening and realizing the self-talk, the negative self-talk.
oh
And
yeah,
so it all starts with being aware, but then after that, it's kind of the choices we make and how we carve our own character, if you will,
yeah,
out of
yeah,
like the blank piece of wood, into who we want to be and what we value. And so that's
yeah.
what I love about this story. So.
Well, and one of the things I learned from one of my coaches, not the grief coach trainer, but another coach, was to look in the mirror and say, I love you, and speak your name. And so I have that exercise in my book. And I do that when I'm with a group. I actually did this at a Christian academy one year, and I had some little mirrors, and I took enough, and I had these little children up to, first kindergarten up to senior in high school, and gave them mirrors and had them literally, they looked in the mirror and they said their name. They said, I love you. And they said their name, and you could just see such joy. And I've had people do this and they cry.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because it's so hard. And so I invite those who are listening, look in the mirror and say, I love you. Literally, eyes, look in your eyes in the mirror and say that, and then say your name. And then after that, I thank God for creating my masterpiece. And if we can look at ourselves as a masterpiece, look at the value. That means there is no one else like Ellen Seidel. There is no one else like me on this earth. My fingerprints are different from anyone else. And so when we can realize how special that is, then I believe we can love ourselves better. We can have better thoughts. We can see value in what God created. It's not anything of a haughty or proudful type thing. It's a realization of, wow. And you think about how all those organs and everything in the body work. Wow. Talk about intricate. It's amazing. And I would talk about that in my book also. I have several things listed of different parts of our body and what they do. It's mind-blowing.
One other assignment or exercise that I did in a class where I was participating was this idea of trying to understand contradictions, and in this case, it was, contradictions between, really two thoughts that I might hold or a belief in a thought. And when you said, look in the mirror, and I was thinking to myself, well, if I can't look in the mirror, easily say, I love you or I value you, I've got some contradictions. And isn't that a rich, we don't have to talk about it on this particular show any, but isn't that a rich opportunity to do some journaling and to think through what is that about, so that we can be the locus of our control, and in whatever tempo works with whichever methodology, coach, no coach, whatever, start to explore that. So that's amazing.
That's a great thought.
Yeah, we're going to take a little bit of a turn here. We're going to talk a little bit about your over 40 years as a director in leadership at a direct sales company. part of, the Define Yourself show is to think through, our own potential, obviously as we perceive it, but as others may perceive it, in terms of helping us, because as an aside, I created a mentorship program at a Fortune 500 company. And I think that, just like everybody could have a coach, it'd be really great for everybody to have at least one mentor. And so, you were in leadership. And so you were able to kind of set the stage for your team. And what did you do, kind of looking through the lens of how did you help others realize that they had untapped potential and kind of set them up for success, as well as your own success?
Well, somebody poured belief into me after I got into this direct sales company. And I'm a high I on the DISC scale. And so I'm a people person. I love being around people. My dad did some direct sales when he was in preacher school to help with their income. And so I watched, I learned, I enjoy sales. Sales is very honorable. It's solving a problem for people. It's meeting a need. And so the company I was working with is a great company. I'm still with them, and I love their products. And so I wanted to help other women to do that. And I began to feel pretty. I began to dress up, and I wanted to pour that belief into others that had been poured into me. And so that's what I was doing. I was helping women, or I am helping women to see their potential and to realize that they can do more than they think they can. And when we realize that God can do more than we can ever ask or think, I'm like, all right, I'm a big thinker and I'm a big asker. I can't wait to see what else he can do. So if I can help women realize they can do more. And so many people, as I would recruit people into on my team, and then they would recruit in other people into my unit, you could see the fear, just the simple fear. And I had this too, of asking someone. And what I learned was I was more focused on me than I was on the person I was asking. And when I could teach them, let go of you. This isn't about me and my fears. How can I serve that person? What can I do for that person? What problem am I wanting to solve for that person? And so it was amazing that when I would get on the phone, I teach my consultants, what is the reason for making the call? Have a reason for the call. And you've heard some of these things in our other sales training, and I was doing that. Okay, what is the reason? If you have a reason for calling, don't make it about making a sale. Make it about them. And so when I could do that, that helped them to overcome, to get through. And of course, I didn't start the sales training until I'd already been in the company for quite a while, 30 years. Or, excuse me, the grief training, the coach training. Yeah.
Yeah. So that I was thinking and listening, and what I thought is a cute, funny story came to my mind. But first, I want to say, what an amazing capstone to this whole interview. You were that bully girl that didn't believe that she was pretty. Then you had to go through all of that realizations, and then you were selling makeup, feeling good about yourself, right? So here's the story. I had a little bit of a role reversal. My husband raised the kids when I was working at a very high-powered Fortune 500 company, and I was having to do an interview, and I was really frantic, and my kids are watching me, and I'm like, oh, where's my lipstick? And I found my lipstick and I put it on, and I was like, okay, I'm doing the pose now. The power pose. Anyway, so then a week later, I was like, oh my God, I have this huge meeting. What am I going to do? And Marissa goes, why don't you put your lipstick on, Mom? And it was I thought that was so cute, because it was oh, there is something to be said sometimes for just dressing for success, taking the time. It's not even
Mhm.
necessarily, I mean, yes, you have to have the right color, but it's about the taking care of yourself. And it's about like the inner,
Yes.
dialogue you're having with yourself to be
Yes.
prepared. And
It's
it was
amazing.
manifested in the right color lipstick.
It's amazing what a little bit of lipstick will do, and I'm gonna share something that I we were told that the day after 9/11, lipstick sales doubled.
Wow.
It was because it was something that wasn't expensive, but a little something that they could buy to make them feel better. They
Wow.
didn't wanna get extravagant towards something, but it was like, "I need something. I gotta have something to make me feel better. What can it?" Lipstick sales doubled.
That's crazy. Wow.
That's what we were told. So, yeah.
So I'll tell you one more funny story about lipstick since we're kind of on the topic. This is my husband's story to tell, but I'll tell it. So he worked on the Alaskan pipeline, and he was working in sub-zero temperatures, and they had like, I don't even know what they call it, but the place where you would get all your like snacks and
Mhm.
sundries, and they would have chapstick, and the chapstick, I mean, these guys were going through chapstick like who can
Oh,
believe
yeah.
it. Well, through the grapevine, he found out that they were running out, and it was going to be like a week or two until the next chapstick arrival. And so he and the younger guys went and bought like whatever was left. It was like four of them. And guess what was the only thing left? Lipstick.
Oh.
And so then the older, more veteran guys that had been ragging the new ones, which was my husband and his buddy, all of a sudden didn't know they should go to this place to get the sundries, and only thing was left was red lipstick. And so they had to have something at sub-degree temperatures, and so they had to just wear their red lipstick for a week and a half. Anyway.
Oh, that's great. Oh,
Crazy.
laughter. Laughter's so good.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap up our interview. It's been so amazing. I want to know what you're doing right now and what you can share with the audience in case they have any interest. And I heard about it, and I do think you're very wise, Diane. So,
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. Well, Ellen, as I've been becoming a coach, and you listed grief coach, and I'm a health and wellness coach and a holistic cancer coach, and I work with women in direct sales, and there's this and this, and I one day I began to be said to my VA, there's so much, and I don't know where to go, and where do I start with, and where can we maybe make this under the umbrella? Because the master's masterpiece was kind of the umbrella at that time, but I wanted to, it was more physical, spiritual, emotional, and I wanted to add a little bit more like financial and things like that. And she said, Diane, let's just call it Whole Woman of God. It's like, I love that. And so we began to transition with Whole Woman of God. And in the spring of 2022, I was preparing for a ladies' day at a church, and they wanted me to speak from Proverbs 31 about the excellent woman. And so as I was working on that and looking again, here's a whole woman of God right there. You read that chapter. And so there were a couple of scriptures that just popped out at me. And one is when she speaks with kindness. And when she speaks, wisdom comes out of her mouth. And I began to wonder, are my words wise? And I've been really working on reading through the book of Proverbs every month, one chapter a day, and you get through the book of Proverbs. And so I'd really been focused on God's wisdom. And as I was preparing that lesson, a thought came to me. I wish I had had wisdom scriptures in my house for us, our whole family, the children, me and Ken, to look at every day as we walked through the house. And I began to think, I did a vision board workshop one time. I wonder if you could have a wisdom board, you know? And so I began to process on this and I got with my VA and I was sharing with her what I was doing. And I had just kind of printed some scriptures and for my vision board and things and slapped them up there. I'm creative, not artistic kind of thing. So it was there. It was good enough for me. It was visual for me. And so she created some things for me, some images, and we printed off. I put it on a poster board and I took it with me to that ladies' day. So here we have just this poster board, nothing fancy. And I introduced Wisdom Board. Well, some of them were interested in that. And I came home from that and it just would not let go. And even though we were doing a lot of focus on the Master's Masterpiece, I could not let go of Wisdom Board workshop. And I started working on it and I created a workshop and my VA created a PowerPoint for it. And just in December of 2022. So we're not even a year into me doing this. I invited a few ladies and I did my first Wisdom Board workshop. And I told them along that also I was going to be doing a wisdom series, that it would start the 1st of February because I did several more wisdom board workshops week after week after week. And then I started the wisdom series and it was a 16-week program. That's a lot of a commitment, Ellen. I really didn't think about it at the time, what a big commitment that was. But I had several ladies sign up. And what I did was the first month, the month of February, we did By Wisdom, a Spiritual Life is Built. March, By Wisdom, an Emotional Life is Built. April, By Wisdom, a Physical Life is Built. And then in May, By Wisdom, a Financial Life is Built. And in that one, I didn't teach them how to make money or how to invest or save. I taught biblical thoughts. And I learned a lot along the way. And again, I wrote these lessons week to week. And it was so much fun. They were 15 to 20 minutes long. And so I asked them for 30 minutes a week. I told them we would stay on for an hour. I would stay on for an hour. They never wanted to leave. They loved continuing to talk about it after I presented the lesson and getting to know each other and just really embracing God's wisdom in these areas of their life as a whole woman of God. And so now I am in the process of going. I'm happy to share that I will come to people or virtually and do the Wisdom Board workshop. And from there, they can. All this is going to be on a portal. It's ready to launch, just like in the next few days. And so they can purchase that, or I will come and I will teach this. So I'm really excited because I can't do what I do if I don't have God's wisdom. I've been praying, God, give me wisdom, even throughout this, as you were asking me a question that I knew you were going to ask me. It's like, God, give me the wisdom that I say the right thing. And so it's so important, this God's wisdom. And so that's just another part of what I'm doing.
Wow. So I'm going to move to a little bit of how they find you. So give me a second.
Okay.
So this is how you contact Diane at themastersmasterpiece.com. And, again, I just want to thank you so much for coming, Diane. Okay, my mouse is still not agreeing with me. Here we go. Thank you so much for coming. This has been I can't believe how time flies. We're almost at 55 minutes. It's been amazing. And so, sincere, wonderful gratitude for you being here and sharing, kind of your journey, just a taste of your journey and how you're adding so much value for other people. Because it just warms my heart. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's been a joy to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.